In 1973, the film The Exorcist shook the world of horror cinema like no other before it. Directed by William Friedkin and based on William Peter Blatty's 1971 novel of the same name, the movie tells the story of a young girl possessed by a demonic force and the two priests who attempt to save her soul. The horrifying tale of Regan McNeil, the child at the center of the story, became an instant sensation, embedding itself into the nightmares of audiences around the globe. But what many people don't know is that The Exorcist was inspired by a real-life case of demonic possession, one far more chilling than anything the movie could capture. The true story that inspired The Exorcist happened in 1949 in the town of Cottage City, Maryland. At the center of the ordeal was a 14-year-old boy known by the pseudonym Roland Doe. Roland had been raised in a German Lutheran household, and his life was rather unremarkable until the sudden death of his Aunt Harriet. Aunt Harriet was a spiritualist, and her passing left a void in Roland's life. He had been quite close to her. In the weeks that followed her death, strange occurrences began happening in the boy's home. A series of unexplained sounds, including scratching noises and knocking, plagued the household. Objects would move of their own accord, with furniture sliding across the floor and pictures falling from walls. The family, confused and terrified, sought the help of doctors and psychiatrists, but nothing seemed amiss with Roland's physical or mental health. As the disturbances grew more frequent and violent, they began to fear that something otherworldly was at play. Desperate for answers, the family turned to the church. It was a local Lutheran pastor who first suggested that Roland might be possessed. Unable to deal with the situation, he referred the family to the Catholic Church, which had a history of dealing with demonic possession. After careful investigation, Father Edward Hughes, a Roman Catholic priest, agreed to perform an exorcism. The exorcism took place at Georgetown University Hospital in Washington, D.C., in a private room to avoid any public attention. What happened next would haunt everyone involved for the rest of their lives. During the rite, Roland reportedly flew into a violent rage, breaking free from his restraints and using a piece of a bed spring to slash Father Hughes from shoulder to wrist. The exorcism was stopped immediately, and the family, now more terrified than ever, returned to Cottage City. They began to believe that the boy was not merely sick or disturbed, he was under the control of something evil, something far beyond their understanding. After this horrifying incident, the family moved to St. Louis, hoping to leave the horror behind. They sought help from Father William Bowdern, a Jesuit priest with a reputation for courage and faith. After conducting his own investigation, Father Bowdern concluded that Roland was indeed possessed and required an exorcism. He was joined by a younger priest, Father Walter Halloran, who would assist in the grueling process that was about to unfold. The exorcism took place over several weeks, during which Roland's behavior grew increasingly sinister. He would spit, curse, and speak in languages he had never learned. His voice would change, taking on deep, guttural tones that were far beyond the capability of a young boy. Holy water burned his skin, and crucifixes caused violent reactions. On one occasion, the word evil appeared scratched into the boy's flesh. His bed would shake violently, and objects would fly across the room with no explanation. Father Halloran later described Roland's strength as superhuman, far beyond what anyone would expect from a 14-year-old boy. Yet, despite the terror, both priests pressed on, reciting the rites of exorcism night after night, battling the malevolent force that had taken hold of the boy. The priests were not the only ones who suffered. Roland's family witnessed their son descend further into madness and fear, often wondering if the exorcism would work or if they would lose him forever. The room where the rituals took place became a battleground as the priests invoked the names of saints and recited prayers to cast out the demon. Roland would thrash about, screaming obscenities and spitting at the priests, his eyes filled with a hatred that seemed far too powerful to belong to a mere child. It wasn't until the night of April 18, 1949, that the exorcism reached its climax. According to Father Bowdern and Father Halloran, the priests prayed over Roland for hours, urging the demon to leave. Suddenly, in the midst of the ritual, Roland's body stiffened, and a deep voice, not his own, bellowed, "I am Lucifer. I will never leave." The room grew icy cold, and the priests felt a malevolent presence fill the air. Yet, with their faith unshaken, they continued the exorcism, praying for the intercession of Saint Michael the Archangel to drive out the demon. After what seemed like an eternity, Roland let out a final scream and collapsed. The room grew silent. The demon was gone. In the aftermath, Roland had no memory of what had transpired during the exorcism. He recovered fully, went on to lead a normal life, and never experienced any further supernatural occurrences. The priests, however, were forever marked by the experience. Father Bowden continued his work as a priest, but remained haunted by the ordeal. Father Halloran, too, would recount the event for years to come, though he always insisted that it was a battle between good and evil that could never fully be understood. The story of Roland Doe's possession was well documented within the Catholic Church, though it was kept quiet for many years. However, in the late 1960s, William Peter Blatty, a Georgetown University student who had heard about the case, became fascinated by it. He spent years researching the events and eventually wrote the novel The Exorcist, which was a fictionalized version of Roland's ordeal. The book became a bestseller, and the 1973 film adaptation shocked audiences worldwide. The film's horrifying imagery, Regan's spinning head, her spider walk down the stairs, and her guttural, inhuman voice became iconic. But what made The Exorcist truly terrifying wasn't just the special effects or makeup, it was the knowledge that it was inspired by real events, a real exorcism, and a real battle between good and evil.